Welcome to Coffee Break with Rachel Vigil, presented by Superbook Sports. Taking a daily look at the biggest stories in Denver sports and interacting live with you, the Coffee Break fam. So sit back, relax, grab a cup of joe, and enjoy your coffee break. Here's your host, Rachel Vigil.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday. Lots to get into. Jake Shapiro going to join us here shortly as we talk about the new milestone for the Colorado Rockies. And I want you guys to answer this one in the comments today. What's the bigger milestone? The fact that the Rockies have lost 100 games for the first time ever, or the fact that the Denver Broncos lost by 50 points to the Miami Dolphins? Let me know in the comments. I see some people already putting it in. Biggest milestone, losing by 50. Good morning to you, Paul. RJ, what's up? Thanks for hanging out with us in the comments, you guys. We got a lot to get into. Let's get into our rundown for today's show. Rockies obviously hit 100. We're going to get into it. We're going to also give you a new vocabulary word. And the number one pick in the draft is coming to Boulder. Plus, we're going to get into a league's worst, which has to do with the Denver Broncos. Plenty of stuff, but let's first talk about the Rockies losing by 100. Is anyone surprised? Being completely honest, like 100% truthful, is anyone surprised that they lost 100 games? Because I'm not. We've proven that there's absolutely nothing that the Rockies organization does except for sell tickets that they do well. People continue to show up. James Merrill has been one of the people who has continuously said time after time again, everybody in Denver that goes to the game, you're part of the problem. Because if they don't make money, they're going to make changes. Now, I will say this on the Rockies. They actually did a lot at the trade deadline to kind of set themselves up for success. And it's one of the times in the past recent years that they've actually done that. Usually they hold on to key players. They are kind of like in the mix of wanting to be good and keep those players. They just said, nope, goodbye, everybody. See you later. And then they went with it. Here's an interesting part too, real quick. I want to get to it. ESPN senior writer David Schoenfield says, you know who doesn't get enough credit? Rockies fans. They show up year after year supporting a faceless, losing team and draw more fans than many teams in playoff contention. Like so many of the teams down here, it starts with the ownership, and the Rockies still seem way behind everybody else in developing a modern organization, except in the ticket department. They're very good at selling tickets. Actually, it's kind of funny because he also agrees they're very good at selling tickets. That's what they do. People continue to show up. Coors Field is absolutely gorgeous. I get it. It's fun to go out there. They've got the party deck. That was the best investment that they ever could have done for that place because everybody can go up there. They can drink their lemonade, hang out, and do whatever they want to do. But the product on the field is bad. It's terrible. 100 games, you guys, that the Rockies have lost. I'm quite embarrassed to be a Denver Rockies fan or Colorado Rockies fan. See, I didn't even know their name. A Colorado Rockies fan, and it's embarrassing. It is what it is. When Jake Shapiro joins us, we'll sit down and chat with him too. But let's move on to a new vocabulary word you need to learn. I didn't hear this one until yesterday. Scoreagami. Does anybody know what that means? It is the art of building final scores that have never happened before in NFL history. And we saw one of them, obviously, with the Denver Broncos score, 70-20, losing by 50. But we also saw one in the Tampa Bay game as well. You guys, I think that this is so funny. I love that they're kind of making this whole thing of a scoreagami. And there's like 1,000 of them that have never happened before, essentially. And so it's kind of cool to see. It's another one of those things where the Broncos are on the wrong side of history, but at least they're being a part of history in some way. I still wish Miami would have kicked the field goal and we would have saw a lot more with that, but it is quite interesting. Let's see. Rockies suck. Broncos are in poor shape, 100%. Half the fans that are showing up for the Rockies are rooting for the visiting team. Isn't that the truth, you guys? I was going to say, I'm pretty sure Coors Field had quite a few Dodgers fans out there last night. Anytime that Nolan shows up, we know it looks like a lot of red, even though he's hated out here in Denver. So, yeah, but Jake Shapiro is here, so we will bring him in. And again, I just want to go back to this ESPN article where it says, you know who doesn't get enough credit, and that's the Rockies fans. They're good at selling tickets. I find that to be quite interesting. Jake Shapiro, good morning, my friend. How are you?
I'm great, and it's a wonderful day to be representing the Montfort Company from Greeley, Colorado. What a great organization putting together such a beautiful product to come to every single year. A wonderful product, Rachel. I mean, there's no better bar in Denver. Who cares about the baseball? It's good drinking. It's good weather. It's good vibes. I mean, who cares about the rest?
That's what I said. I was like, the best thing they ever did was install that party deck up there at Coors Field. Everyone can get their lemonade. They can hang out. You don't even have to watch what's happening down on the field.
I've been to, obviously I've covered Rockies games for us this year. Like I've actually gone and watched, I've gone to multiple Rockies games with my friends this year where I did not see a single pitch. And
Yep.
yes, James Merilatt has prescribed me as the problem. I will tell you, I am not the problem. I am an effect of the problem, which is right there. It has nothing to do with the fans that show up. You should never be subscribed to or prescribed as the issue for wanting to support the local team or wanting to go to the ball game. It's a very natural thing that us sports fans and us casual people around Denver want to do. So, I don't know, Rachel. The thing that I was most stricken by yesterday was not necessarily ownership, who I've known has been bad the entire time, even through the good times, or front office mismanagement, or even that the team has been bad. I've been telling everyone that this team was awful for months, and going back into last year, I wrote an article at the end of last season saying, hey, last season, it was really, really boring. It was the most boring season in Rockies history, even more boring than this season. But next year will be a worse season. And what happened is the talent got worse and there were injuries. But again, what I was most stricken by yesterday, what came to my mind most is you go back to 2018, Rachel. The Rockies and the Dodgers were the exact same by record. The Rockies messed up that trade deadline by not adding more. They could have done more. They decided to not sell for the future because they wanted to be continuously competitive. Since then, the Dodgers have never won less than 91 games. 91 games was the fewest games they've won. 91 games is the second most games the Rockies have ever won in franchise history, and they have not finished above 500 since then. The Dodgers have continuously gotten better, have won World Series, have spent money. There was a world in which the Rockies could have kept up with them, at least for a year or two. They didn't even attempt it. They punted. They soon thereafter got rid of the best player they've ever had because of reasons for people that do not play good and a lot of money. And then they replace him with a player who stinks, frankly, for a lot of money in Kris Bryant soon thereafter. So the comparisons of where the Rockies have gone in the last couple of years is just it's just so frustrating as a baseball fan. And at some point here, Denver sports fans, if they haven't given up on the Rockies, will soon. And you start to feel the apathy growing not only for the Rockies, but the Broncos as well.
You know what? As you say that, it makes me think of the Denver Broncos too, because it seems like they all try and buy into one player who's going to come out and save the day. The Rockies did that with Kris Bryant. The Broncos have done that with Russell Wilson and then Sean Payton. There's similarities between the two of them right there.
Yeah. The thing is, no one in baseball thinks one player is going to save the day.
True.
What is interesting, though, you bring up the point of signing Kris. I wrote a whole story for denversports.com after they traded Trevor Story, saying this was going to be the first season in Rockies history that they didn't have a star player on the team. They've never been in that situation before. The Rockies have always had a guy that you could go to the ballpark and wear his jersey. They signed Kris Bryant to a lot of money late that offseason, right after I had written that column. And whether you like it or not, Kris Bryant is a World Series MVP. He's a former NL MVP. He is a star player. He's a fantastic ball player when he is correct. He has spent 2 years being not correct. He's also the second guy the third player the Rockies have signed for a boatload of money and then moved to first base, which in baseball is the least valuable position because it's where you can do the least defensively. It's where your impact on the game is lessened defensively. And Kris is a former Gold Glove caliber third baseman and Gold Glove caliber left fielder, but the injuries have robbed him. Meanwhile, at the plate, he has not been good either. But Kris Bryant is not the problem. Kris Bryant is one of the problems. The big problem with this Rockies team is they had fantastic pitching in 2017, 2018, and even 2019. You started seeing some issues in 2020 and 2020, 21. But they got rid of Tyler Anderson for nothing. They let John Gray walk. Kyle Freeland was signed to a contract extension that has not played out well. Herman Marquez and Antonio Senzatella have ended up with season-ending surgeries right there. That's a starting five. That's an entire rotation that they had a couple years ago, and none of those guys exist anymore. Now they have filler guys. And by the way, they had some really good players that were not in that starting five that would come up and be, pitch a game or two every once in a while, like a Peter Lampert who was fine, or even a Jeff Hoffman who was fine. Rachel, they don't even have the league average or below the league average of just like a capable player anymore. They like their best players, a couple of them are like league average. And then after their league average players, they have guys that wouldn't be on major league rosters. It's frankly embarrassing when you look at their team compared to the Dodgers, when the Dodgers backups are guys that you're like, they would start on the Rockies. You look around the Rockies starting lineup and you're like, which one of these Rockies is fitting into the Dodgers starting lineup? And the answer is probably none of them.
So tell me this. Why should fans of baseball care about the Colorado Rockies? Why should people here in Denver care about the Colorado Rockies?
Yeah, I mean, I can go all hot takey on you as much as we want because it's fun. But honestly, if we're going to talk about it and I've got baseballs over my shoulder, I've got a mitt right behind me. The romanticism of baseball is just beautiful. Like, you go to the ballpark and you never know what's going to happen. Like, we almost saw a no-hitter thrown by this Rockies team. There have been a couple grand slams by this Rockies team. I've seen a bunch of cycles at Coors Field in years where it did not matter. You see beautiful things at the ballpark every time you show up, and you don't know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen in baseball. The Rockies suck. They really do. I promise you, they are a horrible baseball team, and they're horribly run. And yet they could make the playoffs next year. I'm not telling you it's going to happen. Like, there's a 1% chance that everything goes right, but their pitching stays healthy. Their bats come along, their young hitters come along, and then maybe they get some of their young pitchers up towards the end of the season. Things could go right. It almost worked for the Cincinnati Reds this year, who we all thought were a mile apart. The Chicago Cubs are sitting in a playoff spot right now, and everyone expected them to maybe lose 100 games this year. You never know what's going to happen in baseball. And the thing is, it's been 31 years of that, Rachel. It's been 31 years of just hope with Colorado Rockies fans. It's not been any substance. There's been substance maybe in 2008, 2009 after the miracle run. And then in 2017, 2018, 2019, you could kind of feel it building. But it's just, that's why we're out of our, we're done off the leash with the ownership and the team, because the hope is all we've had. And now it's like, is there really even a reason to hope besides just the random craziness of baseball? And that's what's the struggle. If you look at the Rockies playoff odds throughout the course of the season, they started at 1%. Everyone has a chance to make the playoffs technically. By the end of 10 days of baseball, they were already at 0.05, according to Fangraphs. The Rockies had no chance of ever making the playoffs this year, aside from maybe getting off to a hot start and then everything breaking right. You need to develop pitching. You need to have a system in place to actually have some star players. And then you bring in, a couple bats at the deadline or something like that. But there's no scenario in which in a division of 5 that your playoff odds should be below 20% to start the season, right? Like, you just do the simple math, let alone the fact that there's wild card spots. So in reality, your chance to make the playoffs is around 25, 30%, assuming all teams are created equal. So when you say the team starts with a 1% chance of making the playoffs, that's embarrassing. It's really, really bad. So why should Colorado Rockies fans care besides hope? Well, this is our ball club. Things can happen, like I said, and it's fun to go to games. Like, that's really it right now. They've got a couple young players that might be good one day. Ezekiel Tovar's had a really good second half of the season, and he's going to be a stud shortstop for the team for years to come. Zach Veen ended his season with a season-ending injury earlier this year in the minor leagues. He's a stud prospect for them. They've got a couple players, but it's going to take more than a couple players. It's going to take a lot, and it's going to be a while. And I wouldn't be surprised if they lost 100 games again. I've seen some people say that they might make the playoffs in 2025. Rachel, I honestly do not know who's going to make the playoffs first between the Rockies and the Broncos. I asked this question on Twitter. A lot of people seem to think the Broncos. I would very, very sneakily say maybe the Broncos, just because more teams make the playoffs in the NFL, and generally speaking, turnarounds are quicker. But we're looking at it as the Broncos, playoff drought of horribleness, which is one of the worst in the sport right now, or worst in sports in general. That might get replaced by the Rockies, like right thereafter.
What's the bigger milestone, Jake? The Rockies losing 100 games, or the Broncos losing by 50?
Broncos losing by 50. Baseball teams lose 100 all the time. This is 3 or 4 teams a year do this. The Oakland A's are going to lose 110 games this year. Here, Rachel, I'll give you a stat. 162 games are played a season. Do you want to know how many times the Oakland A's went into a game as the betting favorite this year?
How many?
3. That's how bad some baseball teams can get. The 1899 Cleveland Spiders, they won 19 games in a 140-game season. Like, this is not historically bad. This is bad. It's historically bad for this franchise, but there have only been 31 years of baseball here in Denver. There have been 200 years of baseball elsewhere where things have happened where owners of, like, literally an owner comes in and says, I own the Rockies and the Dodgers, and I want to trade all the players from the Rockies to the Dodgers. Like, there have been things that have happened that are so wild in baseball that make for such losing situations. The things that combined to happen on Sunday for the Broncos to allow 70 points and to lose by 50, you have to go back to an era where people were playing football as a second job. They just don't happen. We are talking about literally non-professional football at that point, a different style of football, games that happened indoors randomly because they couldn't play outdoors. Like, it is so embarrassing. And I'm glad you brought up the Scoregami thing, because I love Scoregami. I love John Boys. By the way, the Broncos had a ton of Scoregamis last year because teams that score 16 is a really weird number too. So yeah, anytime you start getting up there and score. But it's funny because I watched the media and people talk about the Broncos game like it's so crazy. And yes, it was crazy for an NFL perspective. But you as a Ram and me as a Buff, I've certainly seen my college football team lose by 50 before.
Right? It's just a little different because it's professional. These guys get paid a lot of money to not get 50 points scored on them. I want to talk to you real quick about Coach Prime, and we get into a little bit of Buffs talk with you. Did you see that he is actually trademarking some different quotes that he's had? Ain't nobody scared. F around and find out. We keep receipts, Pitbull and pumps, working or twerking there, Jake. I'm curious your thoughts on Coach Prime being quite the businessman and going out there and doing trademarks.
Get your money. Get your money any way you can in this country. This is capitalism. This is the way we do it. I want to know what Pitbull and pumps means. Like,
me too.
What did that start with? Like, is he Pitbull? Like, is my guy Armando like being taken place by Prime? Why is he in pumps? Who's in pumps? The only other person I could guess is a Pitbull and pumps is his daughter Chalamet Sanders, who is a women's basketball player for CU. Or the other one that's bizarre, and I tweeted this yesterday, because apparently these trademarks are for home goods. So you're going to be able to get like working or twerking on like a coffee mug or like a shower curtain. Like, what are you doing? Right. Or a pillow. Like, I'm going to get like a vanity pillow that says working or twerking. What is that?
I am confused. There's one that I thought for sure would be on there when I heard Dion is trademarking certain slogans. The I ain't too hard to find. Has that already been trademarked? That's already been
trademarked, Rachel.
Okay, I wanted to make sure.
So
interesting. Coach Prime, quite the businessman out there.
If you go back and Rachel's in the Sports Office vlog, and I think this was the Nebraska game, she caught a video of someone selling bootleg shirts, and they had the ain't too hard to find on it, but it was spelled incorrectly so that it would beat the trademark.
Shut up.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. That's too good. It's also just as good as Coach Prime's Lamborghini getting a parking ticket up there in Boulder. Is it that hard to get a parking ticket, or do they just hand them out left and right?
They hand them out left and right from what I've heard, I swear to God, and no one believes me because I've lived in Boulder or taught in Boulder or been a student in Boulder since like 2007. I've been a big Boulder guy. I swear to God, I've never gotten a parking ticket on CU Boulder's campus. And I'm the only person I know who has not gotten a parking ticket on CU Boulder's campus. Everyone I know has gotten multiple parking tickets, have gotten their cars booted, have gotten their cars towed, like the whole ringer of it. They are crazy up there. But again, I have no firsthand experience of this. Maybe I'm just a really goody two shoes because I'm always the person that's like, all right, I gotta go. I'm not going to reveal my secret parking spot, but let's just say because I grew up in Boulder, I know some really good places to park near campus that are for free, and I have some connections on that front. So I've never needed to bite that bullet, so to speak.
Okay, I like it. Well, Jake, people are happy you showed up. Jake, can you please join Rachel on this show every single day? I feel like we haven't had Jake on in a while, but Jake, we will definitely be having you back real quick. Will the Broncos be up in Boulder this weekend to look at possibly the number 1 pick in the draft?
If the Broncos aren't sending scouts to Boulder, they're more incompetent than we believe.
Amen to that. We can't compare that yet, right? We cannot compare the Monfort to the Walton Penner group and the Denver Broncos.
That's definitely okay. 1, not what I'm doing. 2, I'm just making the joke of the Monforts because it's great. It's a great hat. I got this in Leadville for $10. I can't believe it still. What a steal. Let me tell you, we are still half a decade away from being able to judge the Walton Penner ownership group because they didn't make the Russ trade. Yes, they signed off on the contract, but they didn't really have the autonomy at that time to really know what they were doing. This roster is not theirs. This GM is not theirs. Sean Payton might be their guy, but Sean Payton's going to have to turn over their roster and rebuild. So it's a while before we can judge Broncos ownership. And let's be honest, they're digging out of a deep hole, and it's not Pat Bowlen and the trust's fault. There was just no leadership there after he succumbed to some health issues there. So they were in such a deep hole, Broncos ownership, and the ownership always leads the rest of the organization. And that's why ownership declining, it took a couple years to affect the team. Now it's ownership succeeding is going to take a couple more years to affect the team. So the team's going to trail behind ownership. It's going to take some time with the Broncos. And that's what people don't understand. I said this on Denver Sports Tonight. I've said this on Coffee Break before. I thought the Broncos were going to be awful this year. No one wanted to listen to me. They have no pass rush. They have no defense. And now people are wanting to listen. They need to tank out. They need to bottom out. They need to cut bait with Russ. Russ is fine right now. Like, actually, I've been told I'm a Russ hater. Russ is fine right now. He's completely fine. He's just not worth making that much money is the issue, as well as the fact if you're rebuilding, there's no point to have that much salary on your books. Go get Caleb Williams. He looks like Patrick Mahomes light. Go rebuild through the draft. Take yourself a couple years. The problem is, Rachel, you look at these other teams who are rebuilding, and the Bears have had top 10 picks for the last 5 years. Eventually, they're going to get a quarterback that hits, and they're going to have a roster full of young cost control players that are good. The Broncos have not had that draft capital, so they're missing guys all over the field. So it's going to be quite the long rebuild, even if they do make the playoffs, because it's going to take a while to get to the level of that of the Kansas City Chiefs and, you know, the Miami Dolphins, who are run by a coach that should be the Denver Broncos coach.
Oh, isn't that the truth? That would be crazy. The former ball boy for the Denver Broncos, Jake Shapiro, as always, appreciate you hopping on. We will definitely have you on more, my friend.
Whenever you need it.
I was going to say Nuggets start back up very, very soon. We know Jake is our Nuggets guy.
Look at there. You're right there.
Very nice. Very nice. I like it. Lots of good Nuggets talk to come. Definitely more positive, hopefully, than what we're talking about the Broncos. Thank you, Jake. All right, everybody, let's get into our rundown real quick. We hit Rockies hit 100. You can talk to your coworkers about that. You have your new vocabulary word. You also have the number 1 pick in the draft is coming to Boulder. And will the Broncos be up there? Yes. Well, how about we get talking a little bit about a league's worse? The Broncos are number 1 in the NFL right now, having 40 points on average allowed per game. That's terrible. Of course, having 70 dropped on you does not help your case at all. But what's concerning is the defense and how much money they're actually putting into it. They are one of 7 teams to have a defense that is over $100 million. One of 7, and they are the league's worst. So let's kind of dive into some of the big playmakers there. we've got Randy Gregory, who's on a 5-year, $70 million deal. $14 million this deal. Essentially, Randy Gregory has really done nothing. He's had 6 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 tackle for loss so far through 3 games. We'll move on to Justin Simmons. He, of course, has been injured. He's on a 4-year, $61 million. We'll move on to Zach Allen. Cecil and I talked about this yesterday. He hasn't been this big showstopper that he was supposed to be when he came out here. He's on a 3-year, $46 million contract. Now, here's the thing. This year, he's not really getting paid that much. He's getting paid $2 million roughly. Next year, he gets paid $15 million, which is kind of crazy. His production has to increase. So far this year, he's had 14 tackles and 3 tackles for loss. So definitely higher up on that defense, but definitely not good enough for $15 million next year. DJ Jones, 3 years, $30 million. Alex Singleton, 3 years, $18 million. And Josie Jewell, 3 years, $11 million. That's some big paychecks for some players that are allowing an average of 40 points per game. Again, I understand it. It's a little swayed because not every single week do you see 70 dropped on a team, but still, they haven't come to produce like they were supposed to. This defense is so concerning. Vance Joseph is concerning. I see all of the comments about it. It's not good for this Denver Broncos defense, which is something that's been a highlight for this team for the past couple of seasons. So where's the disconnect going? I am concerned about this game against Chicago because here's my thing. I think that they got a reality check last week. I think they got a gut punch last week, and I think this team desperately needed it. I think that they actually thought that they were a little bit better than they actually were. And I think that's, again, kind of the same thing we saw with the offense last year. Oh, Russell Wilson's going to come in and save the day. Oh, Sean Payton's going to come in and save the day. But Sean Payton has not historically had really good defenses by any means. But I think they thought that they were a little bit better. And of course, when you lose to the Raiders, it's a semi-close game. It's kind of like, okay, we were close in that one. The Commanders having a rookie QB come and put 35 on you, it's not a good look at all for this defense. Then having the Miami Dolphins put 70 on you, that's a gut punch right there. But if they think they're better than they are, they're going to lose to the Chicago Bears this weekend. The gut punch will not be enough. The yelling I'm sure Sean Payton is doing and Vance Joseph is doing in their meeting rooms will not be enough. And it's either they quit on this team already, which week 4 is absolutely insanity, or they just think that they're better than they are. I think Russell Wilson will actually save the day and he'll put up some points over the Chicago Bears, which will ultimately lead them to winning the game. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do. Justin Fields, obviously, we're not sure if he's going to play because of the concussion. We'll see. Reading your guys' comment. 16-16 tie game. You guys, I could not even handle that if that happened. If there was a tie game between the Broncos and the Bears, I would absolutely lose my mind. That cannot happen. Mel, this is a must-lose game. Are you saying that because you want them to tank for Caleb Williams? Let me know in the comments. I'm definitely interested. Let's see. Broncos overpaid for mediocre talent. 100% agree. I think that there's definitely clashing in the locker room as well. And I've said all along, last season, if you paid attention to Coffee Break, you paid attention to our post-game live shows, you know I was the person out there who was saying, it's not on Nathaniel Hackett. It's not on Russell Wilson. This is on George Paton. And George Paton has continued to overpay athletes. For what? Zach Allen with 14 tackles? Great. He's going to get $15 million next year. Randy Gregory has done absolutely nothing. James Marilat told us earlier this week here on Coffee Break that he did not record a single stat. A single stat against Miami. That's crazy for somebody who's supposed to be out there and putting up good numbers for your team and is supposed to be a leader of your team. He was proving to be a leader out at training camp. You saw him pumping up guys. You saw him getting down and dirty. Where has he been for the rest of the season? That's 6 tackles is disgraceful from Randy Gregory, and for how much he's getting that $14 million this year. Disgraceful. Reading back to some of your guys' comments. Please, do we need a top 2 pick? Definitely helps. Here's another question. We're going to get into this one tomorrow too, because we're almost out of time here. Is it worth keeping Russell Wilson and investing in somebody else to help this team's depth? Because Russ does look better. I wouldn't say he's 100% fixed, but he looks better. And to get help elsewhere, or do you completely tank and hope that you can get Caleb Williams? That's a question we're going to get into tomorrow, you guys. Last one that I got for you real quick, just talking about Sean Payton. He's gone 0-3 3 times in his career, in 2007, 2015, and 2016. At the end of all of those seasons, he was 7-9. And do we all remember Coach Payton's quote earlier this summer? If this team isn't a playoff team, I'm going to beat pissed. 7-9 sure doesn't look like a playoff team to me, Coach Payton. All right, everybody, thank you so much. I hope you guys have some stuff to go talk to your coworkers with. Hang out, chat. We'll be back tomorrow morning, 10:30 a.m. for another episode of Coffee Break. Love you all. We'll see you guys then. Bye.